Hello, can we hear me now, please? Yes,
We
sir.
are hearing you once again.
Oh,
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm very
we can
sorry.
hear you now.
I'm very sorry. My network just went off. Thank God I'm back. I was on Elder Bukola Ajishafe. I don't know whether she has shared her thoughts, whether she has been responded to. Dr.
No,
No,
she
I
has
haven't.
not. We're waiting for you.
Oh, thank you. I'm
No,
very
I
sorry.
haven't. I was waiting for your volume. Good
Okay.
morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm so grateful to be part of this. And I want to say that I actually benefited. And my eyes were open to one particular thing. You know, when you were talking about resolving conflicts, that we should look out for, sorry, I've forgotten what you called it, but that's somebody who is gaining in the matter, you know, that would rather be happy that the conflict is going on. You know, most times we just look at how to solve the problem between the parties involved without looking at who is gaining and fueling the matter. So that's a real eye-opener for me. I'm grateful. I've been so impacted. And I look forward to more lectures. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma, for that feedback. So we move to Pastor Bamidele Olashupo.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you,
You
sir.
are well appreciated, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I just perceived when Brother Sunkomi was talking, and I just want to plead with him to take things easy and be prayerful. If you are embittered and you are not fully open to the Holy Spirit, you might be taking wrong decisions. So I want to plead with you, please try and take it easy. Open your hearts more to the Holy Spirit. Everything shows that you are not yet happy or satisfied with the other person, but take more time so that time can heal and you can hear more of the next step to take. Please don't take rash decisions. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Okay, we go to Reverend Adeshokon for his input.
So thank you so much for this session. It's so impactful. I equally learned that there are always shadow or spoilers benefiting, and it's a big eye-opener to me as well. So I want to respond to that.
Sorry, Pastor, unmute yourself. Reverend Adeshokon, please unmute.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. Unmute again, please.
I have done it today.
Thank you.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Yes, I think I also benefited. I'm also impacted in this section, particularly in the area of shadow or spoiler to conflict people benefit. I never look at things from that angle, so it's a very big eye opener for me. Thank you. I want to also kind of talk to our brother who had issues with that mission. I have been there before, but what helped me was that I was following Jesus. I wasn't following people. And most people that have problems in that kind of situation is that when you enter a system and you begin to follow a personality instead of Jesus. In my own case, I have been with the mission, I have served in the mission, I've worked there. But I quickly noticed that some things are not in tune with some things that are being practiced there. And I quickly pull myself back to order. And today, I am very fast. I am flowing with that organization perfectly well, but I had to adjust my own ministry. I took what is right, I jettison what I don't want, and I'm flowing with the ministry. So my brother should not feel bitter at all, but rather he should rediscover himself, and probably God is just telling him to focus on a particular problem that needs to be solved in order to establish his own work. So I want you to just calm down and wait. And as that study has advised, you shouldn't take any decision now because you of course, free of bitter. But rather, you should focus on the difference that you have with that organization and use that as a platform to start a work. Or maybe if what is his passion made about is a point that is leading to what he can do for himself, the problem he must solve in the body of Christ. So you should rather see that conflict as positive instead of seeing it as negative. That's just what I want to say.
Thank you very much, sir, for that input. I know Bro Evangelist Olasokami is really speaking.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, Pastor Amo, Pastor Oladile Matthew Amo. I see your hand up, Pastor Amo, Pastor Matthew Amo. Pastor Matthew Amo, are you still with us? Okay, over to you, Doctor. Oh, I see the hand of my auntie, Pastor Auntie Oluwatoyin Thompson, ma. Auntie, please go ahead, ma.
That's, I think, Mommy Akinade.
Oh, is Mommy Akinade? Oh, is my mom? Mommy, please go ahead with your question, ma. Please unmute. Unmute.
Okay. I just want to ask if I can present at this time, if I can present the CLCR Group 7 discussion on yesterday's questions.
No, let's leave that till later in the day, ma.
Okay.
Okay, let's leave that till later in the day. Okay. You do your presentation then.
Okay.
Thank you, ma. Dr. Ife.
Yes, thank you very much, everyone, for this session. For now, we'll go on tea break for 10 minutes. We're a little behind schedule, so I would, enjoin everybody to please return, stretch your legs if you want to take tea, and then come back in 10 minutes exactly. Thank you.
Sorry, are we using the same link to join?
Yes, the same link. The same link.
The same link, yes.
Thank you.
Where is the tea room?
It's right beside you, sir.
Just enter your kitchen.
Somebody said you should just enter your kitchen. See you in 10 minutes, sirs and mass. Okay, so I said in the morning session that the key questions are form of mapping. Mapping here refers to making sense of the conflict. And you will agree with me that if we ask those questions, we begin to understand, we begin to make sense of the conflict that we are about managing, the conflict we are intervening in. And also, one of the tools, which I called meta tool, that is specifically the tool 5W, 1H, and so what. It's also a framework for us to make sense of conflict. So in a way, they are tools for mapping conflicts. I'll be talking about another framework here, conflict mapping, another framework for conflict mapping, and is a concept that describes both process and practice and specific tools for making sense of conflict. It helps us to identify certain basic elements of conflict for us to produce a roadmap or make sense of a particular conflict. So conflict mapping helps us to have an idea of what we want to dabble into, to have the basic knowledge. So it's like the foundation on which we now use the conflict analysis tools. Conflict mapping is useful for us, conflict managers, for the conflict party themselves, and for people learning about peace and conflict. As I said earlier, in conflict mapping, the elements we want to gather information on are the context of the conflict, the parties, the causes, consequences of the conflict, contrasting beliefs and values of the parties, their goals and interests, the dynamics of the conflict, functions, and regulation potential or local capacities for peace. It is when we map that we identify the potentials for resolving the conflict in a constructive manner. So these are the basic elements I just identified. These are the key things or variables that we want to gather information on in conflict mapping. So before you analyze conflict, the first thing you want to do is to map the conflict. It's like drawing an outline of the conflict with some features. So our efforts in mapping a conflict will be useful when we're analyzing conflict because we'll be drawing so much. We'll be drawing so much on our conflict mapping. We draw so much on conflict mapping when we are doing analysis. So it's like, okay, conflict mapping is like this. It's like what parboiling rice is to boiling rice. So conflict mapping is like parboiling. You know, when you parboil rice, you are preparing it for boiling. Whether you want to do white rice, jollof, fried rice, once you parboil, it's still part of the process of the final product. So conflict mapping is like parboiling before conflict analysis. I've spoken a lot about this, so about the conflict context. So I'm just, and even other elements, or most of the other elements. So I just touch a bit on them. Said conflict doesn't emerge in a vacuum. There's always a context to it. Sometimes conflicts are connected with other conflicts. They are connected with other things going on in the larger society. Many times, a particular conflict is not as simple as it seems. It is nested in other conflicts like that. Yes, we say you have primary parties, secondary parties, shadow parties, third parties. Third parties are people like us who are trying to help members, who are trying to help conflicting parties resolve their issues. We are third parties. Okay. We have extremists and spoilers. Extremists are people who, they are parts of the primary party. For instance, let's say communal conflict. Extremists are individuals that hold extreme views. Extreme views. They are usually not reasonable. They are usually not reasonable. They want a zero-sum conflict. They want winner takes it all. Their demand, they want to hammer on reasonable demands. Sometimes we uh, we exclude them to give them some kind of special treatment, special in quotes, meaning that we may need to visit them separately after some meetings in order to specially tone down their extremism. To tone down their extremism. Sometimes when the conflict is intergroup conflict, you may have extremists in both camps. They are the people that usually call Alagidi, the stubborn people that want it all, let's scatter everything. Sometimes their motivations will be different from the motivations of other members of their group. Their motivations will be financial, their motivations will be recognition. It is our job, part of our job, to ensure that they are taken care of. Taken care of will be in diverse ways. We could reason with them, like some of the things we learned yesterday under constructive escalation. We could use coercion, we could use reward, we could use punishments or whatever to make sure that they are contained. In extreme cases, in very extreme cases, we may exclude them totally from the group. But if we are taking that position, we want to ensure that once they are excluded, they are put in a position that they cannot influence, they cannot impact negatively on the outcome. Sometimes governments will extradite such, they will incarcerate such people because sometimes they will take them out of the community and so on and so forth. But we, as conflict managers, we need to be aware of such people. But it doesn't mean that all conflicts has this kind of parties. It doesn't mean that. Okay, so.
Sorry, sir. Could that be what the government of the Federal of Nigeria is doing to Nnamdi Kanu?
Nnamdi Kanu is a primary party, is the leader of the group. Let's now say that the government is trying to resolve the dispute between them, and Kanu, and let's say a member of his rank, maybe one of his officers, is now making unreasonable demand. No, we must continue. We cannot sit with government. We must have the Biafra at all costs. We must do this. Government will first of all want to, find out, they send out their DSS, what does this man really want? They will find out that, well, what he needs is money. Give him money, we keep quiet, we will settle him. Some people is not money, they just want recognition. Okay, let's also call him for the meeting. Let's say it's so. Some people, they don't want money, they don't want recognition, they just want to scatter things. So government will now push those people in cells. Sometimes government will kill such people, unfortunately. Sometimes they pursue them out of the country. But the most important thing is that one way or the other, extremists must be contained, either by persuasion, use of force or whatever, must be recognized, and their capacity must also be ascertained. Sometimes they are only just like loudspeakers, they're just making noise. They don't have the capacity to back up their threats. But some people have credible means to back up their threats. So when we are in conflict, we need to determine which category each party fall into and treat them accordingly. Causes and consequences refers to perceived goals and interest incompatibility in the conflict. What are the interests of the people? You see, how do they perceive their incompatibility? Also, identity. People are always passionate about identity, either ethnic or religious identity, because of what those things hold for them. values, and resources are also usual causes of conflict. Consequences refer to the result of the conflict. Sometimes distinction between the two may be difficult. As the conflict emerges, cause and consequences might blend. Hostility might be a consequence of one phase of the conflict and a cause of the next conflict. That's what we are saying. For instance, when a group, maybe an ethnic group, kills some people in the other ethnic group, that there may be a reprisal attack. And you see, that may keep consequence cause. It may be in a perpetual spiral. Okay, contrasting beliefs and values. We want to look at the values and beliefs of the parties. Sometimes beliefs of people who are in conflict may be so divergent that it may become difficult to resolve their conflict. Usually people in conflict, they have negative image. I spoke yesterday about dehumanization and demonization. The tendency, the mechanism to see the worst in people we are in conflict with. Some people believe in God, some don't believe in God. All these are different kind of belief. Disagreement over facts characterizes much conflict and is probably the most readily resolved. If there is disagreement over facts, once we present the actual facts and the two parties see it, then the conflict can be resolved if it is about facts. But when it's about belief, it can go beyond that. I mean, it can be more difficult to solve. Look at spoilers here. Spoilers, their own goal is conflict. They just want conflict. You see, when we have spoilers in a particular conflict, that conflict may be a little bit difficult to resolve than otherwise. Okay. You said a lot about goals and interests. Some of the things I've said is that interest, when we should be able to identify the interest of the parties, because this is where we begin to see overlapping interests, areas where we can negotiate with the parties, and some interests at the beginning, parties may perceive them as mutually exclusive, but in the real sense, they might not be. For instance, parties will like interests and needs like security, recognition, respect, justice, and so on. Sometimes people perceive some of these needs as mutually exclusive, as if once I'm secured, you cannot be secured. But the real thing is that the two of us can be secured. We can feel secured. We can enjoy security. We can have respect. So an important purpose of mapping is to help opposing parties to distinguish their goals, positions from their true interests or needs, and bring those goals and interests as close to unity as possible. You see, you may find it interesting that many times the goals and the interests of parties are similar. It's just that they are phrasing it or framing it in different ways, and thereby they think they are looking for different things. Many times in conflict, what parties want are the same. Many times. Conflict is constantly changing, and that is why we say conflict is dynamic. So we need to look at the dynamics of the conflict. What is the trend of the conflict at this point? Functions of conflict. Conflict performs certain functions for the parties. Conflict functions are its purposes, that is the positive consequences it may be having for the opposing parties. When governments and rebels are in armed conflict, that may be an opportunity for the rebels to be mining minerals. So for them, the conflict is helping them to get resources. Knowing the functions and their consequences may reveal ways or others to produce them instead of conflict. So if we now realize that what is motivating the rebels to continue the conflict is because of access to resources. So we can say, okay, maybe government can give resources another form. For instance, when Nigerian government gave Tumpolo a contract and Asari Dokubo, Tumpolo said he will manage, and he managed the whole South stuff for them, and he did. Everybody, all the Creek boys, everybody kept quiet because all of them now started eating from it. Because the major driver of the conflict is that Niger Deltans saw that despite the huge resources that is being taken from their backyard, they have little or nothing to show for it. Initially, it was because of deprivation, but when they got to Abuja, they saw this all these big buildings. This thing came from our oil. And some villages, some towns there, they did not have electricity until 2011. I don't even think some of them even have electricity now. So that was a major driver. Now government is now applying back the resources through NDDC, through amnesty, and through direct contracts to such people. Okay. Every conflict context contains its own conflict limiting elements. There may be third parties who can intervene, institutions, social or cultural events. This is what we refer to as local capacities for peace. We spoke about that the other time. In the case of lower communities, I think I need to stress this here. In the case of communities, you see, no matter how conflict ridden a community or a context is, there still exist local capacities for peace. And we will do well as conflict managers to actively seek out these local capacities for peace. For instance, in a community, let's say you have a communal conflict between two communities. People have been killing, they have been killed, their houses, properties burnt, and so on and so forth. In that community, people may still be gathering to pray. Maybe Muslims still do their Jumat. Christians go to church. Maybe there are still some local festivals that are still ongoing. Youth, they still play sports. All these are what they are avenues that we can use to reach out to the violent people in the community. These are the things we refer to as local capacities for peace. Maybe businesses are still ongoing. For instance, now, anytime there is a religious conflict, Christians against Muslims, in any part of Nigeria, there are still Christians and Muslims that are still doing businesses together. There are still Christians that some Muslims listen to. There are still Muslims that some Christians still listen to. As conflict managers, we should be conscious of these local capacities for peace. Many times, conflict managers, they go into conflict with this messianic mindset. Oh, I'm the savior. I'm going to deliver them. But the truth is, before you get there, there are some infrastructures on ground. There are some individuals on ground that are still standing for peace, that you can still use their knowledge, their influence to promote peace, to help your work as a conflict manager. At the point of analysis, you must have identified these people. Even if it is interpersonal conflict, like I said in the first session, there are people that these conflict parties still listen to. It may not be within their family. It may be in their workplace. It may be their organ. It may be their business partner. I've had cases of conflict situations that the managers, the conflict managers and mediators, without the knowledge of the party, they went to bring somebody that had influence on one of the parties. And just merely seeing him, the party said, how did you know? Why did you go and bring this man? Because whatever it says, I must accept. In fact, in this popular movie, The Godfather, that man that was going to bear testimony against the Godfather, Al Pacino, they will have used his testimony. His testimony was what the FBI were hanging on to nail the Godfather. But what did the Godfather do and his company? He went to bring his elder brother to court. Immediately, this man saw his elder brother in court. He went against all the evidences he has given by himself to the FBI. He said, I didn't know what I'm doing. He knew that they are going to put him in jail. They put him back in jail, but the mere fact that his brother was present, his brother didn't say anything. His brother was just looking at him because they were Sicilians. The man got the message. He could not witness against the Godfather. There are people, there are institutions that have such kind of influence over conflict parties. Their local capacities for peace. We won't be able to do this group activity now. So conflict mapping is a process or activity that helps us to begin to make sense of conflict in order for us to incrementally understand the conflict and plan appropriate mode and methods of early entry or early intervention. Ordinarily, at our time, I will have asked us to do this, although that is what is going to be our post-course activity, to pick a course that, a conflict we are all familiar with. If we pick a conflict and we analyze the conflict and submit their reports, that will show that we have acquired the skills of conflict analysis. Okay, so let's look at the conflict analysis tool, one after the other. We are going to look at the most basic ones, the ones we are most likely, the one that we necessarily use as we do our work as conflict managers. I will describe the tool, the aim of the tool, and then I will give step-by-step instructions on how to use the tool. The tools are categorized according to their focus on dynamics, actors, causation, structures, issues, and options or strategies. Okay, the conflict wheel, like I said, is a meta tool in the sense that it helps us to identify other tools we use in analyzing different aspects of the conflict. It is not every time we need it, but it's not bad if we employ it. You see, it adds these sectors. The sector is on actors and their relations. So what we do is, in that sector on actors and relations, we will list the tools we will need. For instance, to analyze actors, we have talked about this analytical tool, onion or donut model. Also, conflict map, which will show the relationship between actors and their powers. Or on issues, you can use conflict tree. So we just list the tools we will use. It will help us to have a mental picture and to keep tab on the kind of tool to use for specific components of the conflict. So the aim of the conflict wheel is to organize other conflict analysis tools to serve as an overview when first approaching the conflict. You see, this is an example of a conflict wheel that has been populated. Number one, actors and relation. They said the people here say they're going to use need fears mapping, conflict mapping, and so on. So I don't need to go over this. We have talked about them extensively. This is a profile, context, actors, and dynamics here. I'm the one that named it like that. It wasn't so named by the people that did it in 2004. But for the purpose of trainings, I decided to give it a name, and I call it profile, context, profile courses, profile context, actors, dynamics. Yes. Okay, this is similar to the key questions. In fact, the key questions are drawn from these two. It's also like a meta or semi-meta tool. So I won't go over it again because I've already done the key questions. You will see that the key questions under the PCAD are similar or the same as what we have under the key questions or conflict analysis. So let's keep that one and then move to the conflict tree. The conflict tree. The conflict tree is used to analyze issues, and it breaks the issues into three: the structural, which constitutes the root causes, and then we have the proximate, which are the core problems, and then the effects. The effects are the leaves or the fruits, the branches of the tree. The purpose is to show that although we see the fruits and the leaves and the flowers of the tree, but these are being fed by certain things. And unless we cut this thing off or we uproot, if we are only cutting the branches will keep sprouting, it will keep coming out again. So in this case, we have the root causes of this problem include land problem, colonial period, language polarization, ethno-supremacist states, victimization. This is directly feeding the core problem, which is absence of identity cohesion. There's no idea, there's no cohesion in the, like we say in Nigeria sometimes, that we don't have national identity. I don't know whether I agree to that or not, but this is what we are saying here. There is no unified identity for the different groups in this country. And then the effects of these, those are the branches. We have population trauma, we have exodus, high suicide rate, foreign states intervention, violence and assassination of civilians, and so on and so forth. So you see, this is the conflict tree. We cannot use conflict tree to analyze actors. Conflict tree is used to analyze causes of problem, issues in conflict. Over an extended period of time, the effect of fruits of a particular conflict can fall into the fertile soil, germinate, and develop another tree separate from the original tree. You see, if conflicts are not quickly attended to, the consequences may now become causes. Before you know what is happening, a single tree of conflict, if not well attended to, may now give birth to forests. In other words, we now have several issues in the conflict, because the fruits are falling, they are germinating again, forming another fruit like that. So that's why it's important the skill we are trying to acquire now, conflict management skill, is very, very important to human society so that we don't have conflict, forest of conflict in our hands. The next model is the onion model. Onion model. Thank God that we have our mummies in the house, our sisters in the house, our aunties in the house. But I also know that many of our daddies here, they cook. And I'm not sure whether any one of us will like onion so much that we use its back, that's dry parts, to cook. Unfortunately, some of us, in managing conflicts, we have been doing that. We have been using the back of the onion to cook, and we're expecting to get the aroma of onions. It can't happen. The onion model is a PIN tool of conflict analysis. What do you mean by PIN? Position, interest, and needs. What I call the dry layer, the dry coat of onion, is what we refer to as position. That is what people in conflict say they want. But because, just like we don't eat the back of the onion, at least most of what that I know, we need to peel this back off and get to the juicy part, which is the interest and the needs. They are the interest and the needs. The need is at the center, and it's usually the most juicy part. The most sensitive part of the onion is at the center, at the core. So, underneath the position, like I said, we have the interest. It is part of our job as conflict managers to help conflict parties to peel off these layers, to peel off the layers of the onion, to be able to get to the useful parts. So this is the onion model. You see, position, what we say we want, what the parties say they want. In this case, we have against militarization, the demand for a free press, equal opportunities, and the investigation of assassinations and human rights violations, protection by the security forces, and a denial of the rights of indigenous people. That is against subversion. These are what the opposing parties are saying. Like I illustrated in the morning, the business partners, they are saying, I don't want this contract again. Oh, the wife is saying, I'm not part of this marriage. I want out of this marriage. You cannot resolve conflict based on those positions. You need to peel under. Many times, conflict parties do not know what their interest is until we help them to investigate it, until we interrogate them, until we interview them. And if we are very good at our job, we get to the level of the need. The needs are buried under the interest. Like I said in the morning, the spouse that is saying, I want more money, I want him to be giving me more money. If you peel under it, you may find out that what she really needs or what they need is financial security. She may not really need the cash in her account or on her palm. Because when she gets the cash, she's not laminating the Naira notes. She wants to buy food, she wants to buy dress, she wants to ensure that our children's school fees are paid on time. Maybe if you can get the husband to talk about his plans and to tell her what he's doing to bring money, although the money may not be in his pocket now. Maybe the wife is involved more in what the husband is doing to get money. Maybe the woman will no longer ask about, give me money, give me money. But if we stop at the level of position, sir, you know you are a man of God. And Christianity teaches us that a man should provide for his family. So please find a way of giving madam money. Go and look for money anywhere. Me too, I know how I take care of my family. You are only stopping at the level of position. You will do better if you go to the level of interest. Why does madam need money? Oh, to do this. Oh, okay. Why does she need to do those things? Oh, stability. You may even realize that all what is necessary is for the man to provide a lump sum money to establish the wife or to invest for her and the children. And the matter will be resolved. And the woman will no longer say, I want to separate. Okay, the case I was trying to tell us in the morning, I think is now the right time to tell us the case of a Akure couple. This case was shared in a mediation training I facilitated in Akure last year. We did it for justices of the High Court in Akure. So the 5-day, I was a 4-day training. And when I was handling conflict analysis, the justice of family courts in Ondo State then, the our lordship, yes, that's how we refer to judges, our lordship, shared that experience. She said, emphasizing the need for conflict analysis, she said that there are these couples, elderly couples, said their last born, they had 4 boys. Their last born was in his 20s, maybe all the children in their 20s, early and late, said that the 2 of them were like good example of society. They have very successful educational centers, primary, secondary, and they're even now working on owning their own university. Suddenly they brought their case to bench. Yeah, in front of her, sorry. So they want divorce. He said, after listening to them, she told them that, okay, she will listen to them again in private. So she called them and they told their stories. The woman just wanted out of the marriage. Madam, after 4 boys, after over 20 years of marriage, what is happening? The madam said her husband, a Christian, recently they just found out that he's spending excessively. And the way he's spending, it will soon run the family into bankruptcy. He has joined new political party. Has joined political party. Somebody that was a quiet person, minding his own business, is now a member of political party. He's now keeping late nights. Now they found out that he has started drinking. Daddy, why are you behaving or misbehaving like this? By the time the man started his story, another part of the story of the wife is that daddy is no longer performing well in the other room. Daddy, what's happening? We found out that madam has been complaining bitterly about daddy's non-performance in recent times. That has withered the man's recognition, his self-esteem within the family. A man that was closely knitted or had a very close bond with his wife, when this complaint has now started coming from the wife, he now had to seek solace in other people outside. That was why the man joined political parties. And in order to impress these people, so that his self-esteem that has been wounded by perpetual complaints about non-performance or poor performance sexually from the wife, that he may regain this thing, in order to impress these people, he starts spending for them. And politicians, when they know you have resources, they'll be singing your praises. So this man also started drinking in order to bolster his confidence. It's a true life story, true life. At the end of the day, Justice told daddy, mommy, this thing, they now discover that the whole essence, I mean, the whole reason for this thing is because of performance in the other room. Mommy, have you not heard of Agumu? Say, I don't know. As a Christian, mommy. Eventually, justice referred them to Agumu. 200 naira Agumu solved that problem. 200 naira Agumu solved that problem.
Please, what is Agumu?
These are powdered herb. Sometimes, usually they are bark of trees or leaves that is pounded, is ground or grinded in form of powder. And people can use them as tea or mix them with pap. We do it in the Yoruba land, mix it with pap. I grew up seeing our grandparents, my father's side really, and sometimes my dad, mixing some agumu every week. There's agumu for fever, there's agumu for jedi. There's agumu for eye fever, agumu for this and that. So that 200 naira herbal thing resolved the issue. I told you they were already in court. They have already filed for divorce. So they were not joking. They were ready to separate. But thank God the justice was kind enough to do semi-conflict analysis. He said, I didn't know that what I was even doing was conflict analysis. She was able to go beyond position. If she had stayed at the level of position, she would have, they had enough ground to divorce. But she went below. Why? The level of interest. She now dug below interest, the level of need. Daddy needs self-esteem. Mommy needs performance of daddy, sexual satisfaction. And then with 200 naira
Wow.
medicine, the family was restored. You see, that is what conflict analysis can do. I know that before they got to court, the woman will have prayed, fasted. Their friends will have prayed with them. Their pastors will have prayed with them. Some people have fasted for them. The devil has come in. The devil has come in. People from the village. It's a spiritual attack. It's everything. But analysis made us to see. So you see that just like medical doctors, conflict managers, they play very important roles in the society. But the level of their contribution will be based on the level of their analysis, of their conflict analysis. We have seen situations whereby people have died because some people felt their ailment was because of spiritual attack. Yeah, it's attack. Oh, it's attack. By the time you take these people to hospital, you see that they have been attacked by germs and maybe viruses and bacteria. And small injection, antibacterial injection here and there will kill it. We have seen cases of people that have been tagged barren for years, and they have been praying, fasting, only for them to go to hospital and 500 naira medication, 1,000 naira medication solve the problem. Okay, so that is onion model. The conflict map is a pictorial representation of the actors in a conflict and the relationship between them and their power. The actors, their relative power in the conflict and the relationship between them. This is an example of conflict map. Each line, okay, let me start with the circle. The circle, the size or the size of the circle shows the relative power that those actors have in that situation, in that conflict situation. The lines are showing the relationship between the parties. When you have broken lines, single lines, double lines, Broken line sometimes shows broken alliances. Single line, weak alliances. So is a pictorial representation of the actors, their relative power, and the relationship between them. Let's see it. Okay, so a map, it also shows the conflict theme or issues. So it's like the Chinese proverb that says, a picture is better than 1,000 words. When we're able to do a conflict map, it's like a snapshot, a picture of the conflict at that particular moment. Let's see. These are the symbols we use in conflict map. Circles, I've told us what it represents and the sizes. Straight line is equal to close relationship. Double line is equal to very good relationship. It's an alliance. What we will say, one left or gone. Dotted lines is weak or informal relationship. The direction of arrow, because we use arrow in the lines, the direction of arrow shows the direction, the predominant direction of influence, who has influence over who. Zigzag line, it shows discord or conflict. Sometimes we use lightning bolts to show that the events are hot. They are still very hot. Crossed out line means broken relationship. Half circles or quarter circles, they are external parties, third parties. Rectangular boxes show the issues of the things that people are concerned about, the conflict. So that's a conflict map. You see that it is different from conflict mapping. What we can use, we can draw the resources or the information of a conflict map from conflict mapping. But conflict mapping is, has a lot more information than conflict mapping is more narrative, whereas conflict map is virtual, is pictorial, is graphical, So the two cannot be used interchangeably, they are not synonyms. So conflict map helps us to understand the situation better, see the relationship between parties more clearly, clarify where power lies, check the balance of one's own contact and intervention, identify allies and potential allies, and so on and so forth. The who, what, and how of conflict. It's also like a question framework. We ask who, referring to the actors, what, referring to the issues, and how, referring to dynamics and other trends. So for the who, these are the key questions we ask. Who is involved in the conflict? How do they interact with each other? Where is the conflict center? What people or groups have strong positive relationships with each other? By the time we provide information to these 4 questions, we are answering we are taking care or making sense of the who of conflict. When we do the who of conflict, we can now use conflict map in it to show the who appropriately. The what of conflict, we can use conflict tree. So the who, what, and how of conflict is also like a semi-meta tool. I said conflict wheel is a meta tool. The PCAD is also like a meta tool, and so on. So this one also, the what, who, and how, is like a semi-meta tool for conflict analysis. Okay, I think we talked about conflict mapping. The 3 P's, people, process, and problems. It's also similar to the other framework that asks questions. The people, what is their relationship and the psychology, what is the relational, beg your pardon, and psychological elements of the conflict? People's feelings, emotions, individual and group perceptions of the problem. So these are the 5 questions we ask under the people. Is similar to the who, what, and why. The problem refers to the specific issues in the conflict. The process refers to the way decisions get made and how people feel about it. The process of decision making in a conflict is often a key cause. People may resent the way some decisions are made if they are excluded, if they feel excluded from the decision making process. Okay. Let me wrap up with the ABC triangle. Okay. ABC and these other two. You see, the ABC triangle was proposed in 1969 by John Galton and is a framework for exploring the impact and causes of conflict on attitude, behavior, and context. Though the ABC stands for attitude, behavior, and context. Attitude, it represents the parties' positions, their emotions, and their views of one another. The behavior, the B, is the way they respond to a particular situation in the conflict. It may be outward, it's the outward expression of attitude in form of support, attack, agitation, demand, or violence. The C, which is context, is the environment within which attitude and behaviors develop and are played out. I'm sorry, I think I forgot to put, normally there should be arrows from A to B, from B to C, and then from C to A. These arrows will show in both directions. One arrow will go from A to C, one from C to A, one from B to C and C to B, and one from B to A and A to B. Just to show that all these things, they are mutually reinforcing, they affect each other. Attitude and behavior can change context, context can change attitude and behavior, and so on and so forth. I think when I'll be sending the final, when we'll be printing the slide for us, I will have put the arrows by then. Okay, timeline is a graphic illustration that shows events plotted against a time scale. How the events are unfolding in the conflict with time. This day, this date, this happened, you see. So it shows chronological order of events that led to the stage of the conflict as of the time you are managing it, as of the time it came to your attention. And in doing timeline, we gather information from both sides. You see, the good thing about timeline is that it helps us to see how one action by one party leads to counteraction by the other party. And it helps parties also to see how their actions led to some actions or inactions from the other parties. It will give a comprehensive understanding of the conflict situation per time. You see, this is so different, so different from other ones. You want to learn this separately on its own. It's so different from the other one. It facilitates understanding of the real issues at stake and the history of the case with dates and unearth the remote causes. It facilitates understanding of the trend, the conflict, and the perception of the people involved in it. So the purpose is to show different views of the conflict, clarify and understand each party's perception of events. And like I said, perception plays an important role in conflict. If through timeline we're able to show parties how they have wrongfully perceived some aspects of the conflict, it will help us to resolve the conflict when we present them with facts. It helps us to identify which events are most important and significant to each party. It's a way of helping parties accept their own perspective as only a part of the truth, one side of the coin. See, you want to let a party come to conflict parties come to conflict with the mind that they have the whole truth about the conflict. But at best, what they have is their own perspective of the conflict. When we use timeline, we're able to let them see the other person's perspective, that their own perspective is just one side of the story. The pillar tool is an analytical tool that believes that every conflict has some pillars supporting it. So it is used to look at the structural issues that are supporting a particular conflict. And for us to be able to resolve the issues, we need to dismantle or begin to dismantle the pillars. Examples of pillars: intolerance, fanaticism, illiteracy, bigotry. For instance, if we find out that illiteracy is one of the things that is leading to fanaticism in one area, we may introduce education as part of our conflict management proposals or peace building initiatives in that environment. So the purpose of pillars, okay, to understand the structures, how they are sustained, and we must now look for a way of weakening the structures or removing them. Say that. So there are some challenges to conflict analysis. For instance, people may feel it's taking too much time. Oh, I need to get into this thing quickly. It's like a medical doctor says he quickly needs to operate somebody without knowing what is wrong with the person. They will withdraw a certificate. And worst case, it may even kill the person. Sometimes we think, oh, as the dynamics of the conflict are changing, things are changing. I don't know where to start the analysis. That is not a good enough excuse. Sometimes triggers may be difficult to identify, or behaviors of stakeholders may be difficult to analyze at the beginning. We are in too much of a hurry. But if we take our time and we use our appropriate tools, we see that all these things are not or are surmountable. Now, it is now required of conflict managers to mainstream gender in conflict analysis. Our conflict analysis is not complete until we deliberately mainstream gender into it. What we mean by gender mainstreaming is that, you see, we want to hear from the perspective of men and women. Many times, we are tempted to think once we listen to men, let's say in a communal conflict, we have captured the whole thing. It is not so at all, because the realities of men are totally different from that of those of women. The way a woman or the way women experience each day is different from the way a man experiences each day. A man and a woman living as husband and wife in the same house, the way they will experience that day is not exactly the same. So when we neglect to capture the views of women, we are neglecting to capture half of the views. So conflict managers must be deliberate in mainstreaming gender in their analysis of conflict. We need to gender disaggregate our analysis. It's not enough to have equal number of men and women interviewed. It's also important to ensure that the relative power or position of men and women we are interviewing are taken into consideration. For instance, as a church leader now, you don't want to just interview deacons, male elders, and then you say, they say we should do gender. Okay, let me go and call our maybe cleaner. We are women. We are also women. At the top, we want to interview women. At the middle level, we want to interview women. at the ground level you want to intervene in, especially when the conflict is outside the household. Necessarily, it's within the household, you talk to the man and the wife, but if the conflict, we need to gather information from other people in the nuclear or extended family. Let's ensure that we also have the views of men and women, the views of men and female and male, boys and girls in the household. We get very rich information from that. I tell you the truth, this we cannot underemphasize. It's so important. Gender mainstreaming is the process of assessing the implications for women and men of any planned action, including legislation, policies, or programs, in all areas and at all levels, including conflict analysis. So I want to thank us very much for our attention. I think we have come to the end of conflict analysis. Like I said during the session,
Thank you, sir.
I thank you too, Saz and Maz. Each group we have to do a conflict analysis of a particular conflict they will choose. The conflict may be in the public domain, government, ASU, whatever. It may be a conflict that one of us or some of us know and that we tell other parties, other members of the group, and then we analyze the conflict. We analyze the conflict and then plan the best way. How best do we resolve this conflict? What do we do to bring the parties together? So that will be our post-course submission. And I want us to ensure that we mainstream gender in the analysis of conflict. Thank you very much, Saz and Maz, for having me again. Over to Dr. Ajekpe. Hello, can you hear me, Saz and Maz?
Very well, sir. We can.
Yes, we can.
Yes, sir. Very well, sir.
Can hear you clearly, sir.
Okay. I don't know whether any one of us have quick comments or questions before we move on.
My hand is up, sir.
Oh, okay. Oh, please go ahead, Pastor Omoniji Oluwadamilare.
Oluwashiji first. Oluwashiji Bomi first.
My hand is raised too, sir.
Okay.
Oluwadamilare, sir.
Yeah, let's have Pastor Oluwadamilare first, and then we go to Pastor Festus Oluwashiji Bomi.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Oluwadamilare Omoni. I'm not a pastor, yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. I really enjoyed the lesson on conflict analysis. It's really a very eye-opening and engaging topic. And I see this as a career, not just something to just think about. It's a career on its own. But as you were delivering, I tried to compare this career, this CR career, with what is happening in the law enforcement areas, in the law arena. Then something came to my mind that what is the place of evidence in this? Because when we're talking about conflict analysis, I see it as the core of it is information gathering, intelligence gathering. So where does evidence really comes in place? Because if you don't have a very good evidence, it may be quite difficult for us to manage the conflict. And
thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. You are so right. Conflict analysis is evidence-driven.
Yes, sir.
And you see, at some point, when I was talking about gathering information, what we discussed there was basically research. I said we do desk research, interview. If you are familiar with social science research methodologies, we see that what we are talking about there is research, both qualitative and quantitative. but it may not be as stringent or as meticulous as the social science research is, but we need to gather evidence. In fact, evidence, like I mentioned at some point, facts. Facts are information based on evidence. And most conflicts really will only be solved when parties are presented with evidence. This course is an introductory course. As intensive as it is an introductory course. It's like the foundational course. Another course that we offer is negotiation and mediation. In negotiation and mediation, we will be taught how we do fact finding. Sometimes we call experts to come and give us information, facts, just like courts we say we do. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Resolution is a fact, is an evidence-driven activity. Okay,
Yes.
that's for Festus. Please go ahead, sir.
Festus Oluwashiji Bomi, not a pastor as well, elder in my church.
Okay, Elder Oluwashiji Bomi.
Yes, I want to first and foremost appreciate God for your life and the wisdom with which you are taking us this afternoon. Prayer is that the Lord Almighty will continue to increase your wisdom and give you successes in all your endeavors in Jesus' name.
Amen. Please, can you on your video, sir?
I beg your pardon.
Can you on your video, your camera?
My video.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I have done that.
Thank you, sir. Oh, we are seeing your handsome face.
Yes, my question is that I missed the last statement you made concerning the group work.
Okay.
About conflict analysis.
Okay.
Before you round off the last session.
Okay, sir.
We were talking about what the group will do. I missed what you said.
Okay, sir. What I said is that there will be a post-course activity, group activity, where each group is expected to analyze a conflict of their choice.
Okay.
The conflict could be a conflict that is already in the public domain. Maybe Sunday, the federal government, Kano, and the federal government and ASU, or any historical conflict, or even a case of conflict in the Bible.
Okay.
Or a member of the group may bring a conflict that is aware of. But if that is the case, he must provide all the information he has on the conflict. So it will be better for us to have cases of conflict that everybody have information on.
All right.
The group then analyze it. You know, we sent you a document 2 or 3 days ago, conflict analysis tool.
Yes.
The tip sheet. Coupled with what you have learned, we will analyze the conflict. The main thing is for us to see how much skills of conflict analysis you have developed. Ordinarily, if this were to be a 3-day course or 4-day course, all those activities in the slide we will do. We analyze conflicts, the particular conflict, we make presentation, and then the facilitators will give feedback. But since we don't have that luxury here, that's why we are making it a post-course event. So that is it, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Pastor Awojobi, I can see your hand up, and then Pastor Favor Diaga. Let's have Pastor Awojobi first, please.
Good day, sir.
Good day, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Well done, sir. We appreciate you for all you do. I want to ask, is it a question or a request now, sir, that the slides or the outline for these discussions, we will be able to get hold of them?
Yes. A few of us have asked me personally on WhatsApp. Thank you for that question, Ma. There are plans to make provision for them. Dr. Adepe will tell us everything we need to know about accessing the resource materials at the end of the lecture today, at the end of the class today. Thank you, ma'am.
It's all right, sir. Then secondly, sir, you mentioned that per group that we should make conflict analysis of. I didn't get the other part of it. Is it government harms you? I think I heard something like ASU, you were making examples of
yes.
What will make okay?
Yes, what I was saying is that a group should decide on any conflict of their choice. I was not just giving examples of conflicts that are already in the public domain that each member can Google search. You can go online and search information for them to be able to analyze it very well.
All right, thank you,
very much,
sir. That's great. Thank you,
over to Pastor Diaga.
All right, thank you, sir, for the training so far.
Thank you, sir.
Growing and educating. Please, I need you to just explain a little more on the actors in a conflict, because all along I've been taking it for the parties, the conflicting parties.
I should explain on what, sir?
The actors in a conflict, in a conflicting issue or in a conflict process.
Actors are in different categories. It includes the primary party in the conflict, the secondary, third parties, shadow parties. Now, who are the primary actors? Let me use the case, example of family disputes between a husband and a wife. The husband and the wife, they are the primary actors, or we call them primary parties. Now, there are some people who also have interest in that conflict. The siblings of both spouses, of the couple. The siblings, their parents, maybe some friends, they are secondary party. Now, the third parties are people like you who want to help them resolve their conflict. And I also explained shadow parties. All of them are actors. But actors have different categories. Actors refer to individuals and organizations. Is that clear, sir? Is it clear, sir?
Yes, please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
I'm trying to jot down what you said.
Okay, sir. Okay, so over to our anchor, Dr. Ife Ajekpe. Tell us what we need to do next.
Thank you, Prof. So what we have next is experience sharing on managing conflict as a pastor. And we have to take us in that. Pastor Dion Akintomide is the lead pastor for Lighthouse Global Ministry, Missions, Magodo, Lagos, and he has been a pastor for about 30 years. So he has about 25 minutes to just share with us how he has been managing conflict in the church. I promises to be interesting. Thank you. Pastor Dion, please.
Hello, good afternoon, please. I just first want to
Pastor Akintomide, you have the floor.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Sorry, I have network issues here.
Please, can you hear me? And can you see me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yes.
Okay, you can hear me. All right. So good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Dr. Professor Ademola Akinwale, Dr. Ajekpe. I will quickly go into to this session now. Since it's all about experiences, I'll just share a few and then share a little bit of principles that have helped me over the years. I became, or people started referring to me since I was appointed a pastor in 1992. And since that time, I have been actively involved in pastoring. And one of the things that I've been actively involved in more than the rest is getting involved in issues with, having to do with marriage. And one thing I can say is that, settling issues in marriage, resolving conflicts in marriage is very, very foundational. And if we get that right, other things follow. It's going to be easier to deal with the rest. I first saw something that's really baffled me about Christians having issues in 1984. 1984, we were in church. On Sunday morning, you see, our church was founded by a man called Pastor Tai. See, this is a denominational church where, you start a church and then you go. Someone else takes over the church and you go ahead to start another church somewhere. So Pastor Tai started the church and then left. Pastor Ekundayo took over. But Pastor Tai used to come as the apostle. He would come around, have the service and then go. Sunday morning, we were just there, and Pastor Tai was on the altar. Pastor Kunda was on the altar. I was in the choir with other young people. The first thing I noticed was that they started arguing. People were praying. Someone had led the prayer. There was a prayer point. People were praying. And then they started to argue and argue and argue. Because, as unruly young people then, we weren't closing our eyes as we were praying. The next thing I saw was that Pastor Taye and Pastor Ekunda were dragging the Agbo Igbala, this was a CSC church. Maybe I should just say that. The bell, the start. Next thing I had.
Oh,
Can't hear you, sir.
Hello, Pastor John. Sorry, I mistakenly muted you. I was trying to mute someone. Pastor John. Oh, thank you. Sorry, I mistakenly muted you. I was trying to mute someone.
Can you? Okay, yes. Can you hear me now?
We stopped. I muted you when you said you were dragging Agbo Igbala.
Okay, so the two pastors started to drag the bell. And as they were doing that, the next thing I heard was Magbaitiye. That's one pastor saying that. And it became a scuffle. The founding pastor and the church pastor started fighting physically, carrying, dragging, and then really hitting each other. It was on Sunday morning, and that was the end of the service. To us very young people then, it was just a kind of entertainment because we weren't that serious back in those days. I'm talking about 1984, and after church that day, I did a little bit of analysis. What could cause the founding pastor and the church pastor to be physically fighting on the altar on Sunday morning? I really didn't get that much of an answer until many years later. After I started gathering experience and I was already in the ministry also. One thing I can say is that I quickly realized that being born again, since this is all about church leaders thing, so I'm going to avoid the intellectual side and focus on the experiential, things we go through. Being born again, speaking in tongues, being zealous for God and all that, does not say there will not be conflict. There will always be conflict. And people don't necessarily get well along because they belong to the same religion, because they belong to the same thing, the same group, and they're carrying the Bible. That doesn't say there's not going to be conflict. And also the fact that we are believers and believing God does not say that we're going to, avoid conflict altogether. Recently, a pastor called me. Someone referred to him. They believe I can perform some magic when it comes to, reconciling family and things like that. So I received this call from this pastor. He was having serious issue with his own son, the first son. That boy had gone into all kinds of things and no Yahoo, whatever. He didn't want to go to church. And he was still he's just 18 years. So the pastor was telling me that, Pastor, please, I want you to pray very, very well. Please pray for this boy. Help me. And he now said he was looking for somebody, maybe a soldier, that he could send the boy to, so that he would live with him, or maybe a barrack, and they would deal with him and something like that. And I said, look, you want me to pray? I said, you think this is about prayer? If it's about prayer, haven't you been praying? And why is this boy like? You think God didn't hear your prayer? Okay, you want to take this boy now to maybe the police station. You want to give this boy as a gift to some military man to deal with so that it could solve him. I said, that's not going to solve it. Then I invited the boy over. You know, sometimes all you need to do is to listen to the grieving parties. Just listen. Some of us ministers just feel that we know everything. You haven't even listened, and you are already judging. You're already saying this is the issue, this is how it's going to be. And you are judging, you are actually passing judgment and making pronouncements. You have not even understood what is on ground. By listening to this boy, I knew where the problem was. Actually, when I was listening to the man, the father, I got to know, I already was having, the idea of what the problem could be. I could see that this boy was unruly, but the father was the cause. And eventually, when I listened to the boy and he made me to understand, he was doing everything to get back at his dad. The father is serving God, he's a pastor, but the lifestyle of that man, the way he was relating with the kids, his rigidness or rigidity or whatever, you know, the way he does his thing is actually putting the children off. This is not 1960 or 1901. And this man is running his house like a military barracks, and the children are resisting that. What they want is love. So when we were able to identify that, it was a very, very easy thing to solve. I love what Prof. Ademola was saying about conflict analysis the other time, and we were able to analyze and we were able to deal with that issue. And one thing people used to say, I don't know, there are pastors there, and I know some of us will believe that, oh, God, take us back to the days of the early church. Things were better it were better than in those days, you know, the early church, this, that, old-time religion. Look, if you read your Bible very well, the early church was full of conflict. We're talking about human nature. Propensity for conflict is natural to men. Are you getting what I'm talking about? This is just the propensity for conflict is natural to man. And it is actually the dominant aspect of man when it comes to relationship. You don't have to learn it. It is natural. However, not that, dominant. It is more recessive. So you have to learn it. Unlike the wahala that man likes to cause, nobody learns that. But we have to learn to resolve conflicts.
Pastor John.
Hello.
Your audio ceased briefly after you said you don't, you have to learn it. You don't have to learn it. So maybe, and then I see that we need something. Please help us. That we don't have to learn conflict.
Okay, listen. All right. But are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay, let me make myself clear again. I said propensity for conflict is natural to man. It's natural, it's part of man's nature to want to have conflict. Because, we want to share things. Your one is bigger than mine and things like that. It might be about space. It might be about who speaks first. It might be about anything. So propensity for conflict is natural to man. You don't have to learn it. How dig before you find. It's something you have to learn. You go out of your way to learn, to resolve. That's why Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers. He said it because peacemakers were not common. Peace breakers is the order of the day in this world. You get what I'm trying? So please, I would just want to know, is my audio? Huh?
It's breaking, but it's still okay.
It breaks, but it's okay.
Ah. Okay. How about now, please? I just don't want.
Okay, now.
I can hear you, sir.
So, we don't learn.
Go ahead.
Propensity for conflict is natural, but to resolve it is something that has to be learned. So I'll quickly, when you go to the early church, for instance, that we're talking about, when we say, oh, you see, early church, Paul was talking to the Corinthian church. He said they excelled in, there was no gift that you couldn't find among them. However, in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, if you start reading from verse 3, it says, you are carnal, there's among you envying and strife and divisions. And he said, are you not carnal? And he was telling that some of you said, I'm of Apollos. Now, we're talking about the early church. They experienced God a lot. He said, you are of Apollos. You have the team Apollos, you have team Paul, you have team Peter, and you have team Jesus. Four teams. And each of them believed they were right. Mind you, these people were filled with the Holy Ghost. There was no gift lacking among them. And see, Paul had to resolve conflicts and had to be dealing with them. So when we're talking about the church, it is not about if, it is about when it will happen. When we're talking about conflict, there will be conflict. And I think it's a thing of consolation to believers, especially pastors, when we're talking about conflict, the fact that there is conflict does not mean that you have failed the ministry. It is just human beings doing what human beings do. It's purely natural. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 2, Paul was talking to the Philippian church, and he mentioned two people. He said, I beseech, he was saying, I beseech or beg Euodias, and I beseech Syntyche. And another were two people, two women who were always fighting in the church. You know what I'm talking about? You're a pastor, you're a believer, you see there are some people, maybe there are two, they don't see eye to eye. Each of them love the Lord, but they just can serve the Lord together. So now, let me quickly share some of the things I have learned as a pastor. The number one thing that I said is there will be conflict. It's not a matter of it, or it's not a matter of if, but of when. So when you're going into the ministry or you want to do ministry, don't let it discourage you. It is natural. Number two, pastors learn the skill of intelligent conflict resolution. Every pastor. We don't just assume that since we're speaking in tongues, since we can preach it, since we can do this and that, and that's fine. No, we must go out of our way. That's why I love this effort. Thank you so much, Professor Akinwade, for putting this together. You see, teaching people will really, really help a lot. Not just a lot of pastors, but a lot of people, they lead. And you don't have to be a pastor. As long as you're a leader at one level or the other, you must go out of your way to learn conflict resolution. Look at Abraham, for instance. Abraham had issues. You know, it was a proxy problem. The herdsmen of Abraham and the herdsmen of Lot were having issues. Lot did not contribute to the resolution, but Abraham knew how to resolve situation. And what did he do? He just did something. He resolved it by separating what was causing the conflict. So, if he didn't learn at some point to do that, I'm sure he could have just said a few words that will escalate the issue, and then the whole thing messes up. Abraham, remember, is the father of faith, a minister of God, someone called by God, but he wasn't just going around counting the stars, like, one old man counting the stars, but he knew how to actually do some practical things to bring stability to situations. Thank you. So now, I think we need to understand something, and I want to really emphasize this too. Every minister must study how to resolve situations in the home, in the family. Because all the conflicts we're talking about in most cases, especially when you're talking about the church, must be handled as a family matter. And unless you know how to really do it in the home, it will be difficult to do it out there. That's where it starts. So now, number 3, one of the things that I've learned again is under no circumstances should a pastor fight a church member in such a way as raising his voice, threatening, and getting into issues like that. Look, there is something called patience. And every minister of God must have patience, must learn patience. There's going to be, between you and people, or between people and people when you're getting involved, as much as possible, we must learn to be dispassionate, and we must learn not to get into situations based on just the superficial, maybe evidence, maybe information that we've listened to. It is very, very important. So raising your voice, arguing and then, shouting because there's an issue, you have already lost that person. When it's getting to that point, calm down. In fact, you can take a break. That's one thing I've learned also in my experience. Do not, you see, Yoruba people will say, "Okun ki ho ruru, ka se kini, ki awa ruru, ka wa ruru." When something is tough and you want to be tough in that situation, and toughness means toughness, well, you're going to have a disaster. So I have learned that we have to be calm, even in the most troublous situations. So when an issue gets to that point, you are not careful, you lose people. Number 4 thing that I have learned is that a pastor, when there is conflict, sometimes you just apologize to people. You are not even involved in the situation. This man, A, is fighting B. You are already apologizing. I'm sorry that this is happening. You have started de-escalating the situation. You don't even know exactly what the issue is first. And yet, you have not gotten into the situation, but by learning to apologize, by learning to say sorry, either for yourself or on behalf of people, you have started, calming situations down. Now, another, because I'm sharing what I've learned. So number 5 thing that I've learned is this, that a pastor must learn to peacefully let go of people, if that is what it will take to avoid problems and resolve situations. We're going to remember the case of Abraham. Abraham said, well, let your people go here. Let my own go. Just choose. You see, sometimes some things are not. Do you know there are certain people who believe in fighting out everything? You don't have to fight out everything. You have to let people know that not everything is worth fighting for. Do you know you can win a war, win a battle, and become useless after that? What is the point of the battle you have won? But your leg has cut off, you don't have a hand, you are blind. So you won. You killed the other fellow. You won. But after the whole thing, you are disabled. There are battles that are not worth fighting. There are arguments that are not worth going into. There are certain things we must just learn to avoid, and we have to let people also know that. You see, there is a principle that I started teaching people many years ago, especially in the home. All of us must have heard about making a mountain out of a molehill. So when there is a little thing and people escalate it and they make it big, we say they are making a mountain out of a molehill. I teach the principle of making a molehill out of a mountain. Something so big, we must learn at times to let people see that it's not really as big as they think. Some things are not just worth it. When you analyze it, see eventually that this are not as big as they are. For instance, I was talking about the pastor who were fighting on the altar. I don't know what could have caused it, but exactly. But when we found out, what was happening was that the pastor, the founding pastor, wanted to take over the prayer. The church pastor said, "No, I'm not releasing it because I still have some other prayer points to say." So the church founder, that CSC founder, he felt slighted. So Pastor Tai said, "Are you crazy? I was the one who even started this. You see, my authority should override yours." Now look at it from both sides. The man who came and felt slighted was respected by us in the church. He did not need to lead any prayer before we respected him. He could have told himself, "Well, we'll resolve this at the end of the day." Maybe he would even report to the elders or something. But he stooped down to the point of dragging, to forcefully take the bell from the church pastor. And the church pastor, who was a younger fellow, was thinking, "Aboya Wirini. Something must be wrong with you." And then that's how it started. That one also, if you look at it, the issue was very, very cheap. The man is not always coming. Next Sunday, you are going to be in charge of the church. He's just saying, "Let me lead these few prayer points." But you're going to see that because he could not just let go, the trouble started. So sometimes we just have to see that the things we take to be important are not as important. If we can learn to de-escalate situations before they start at all, we will resolve conflict before conflicts even rear their ugly heads. So, number 7 thing that I've learned: every pastor must regularly gauge the level of unity, peace, and togetherness in the church. I said every pastor or leader or minister or leader of any group must regularly gauge the level of unity, peace, and togetherness in the church. Some of us are so ignorant of what is going on. It is when the whole thing scatters that we now begin to do damage control. Prevention is better than cure. Look at Jesus Christ working with the disciples. Sometimes you will ask, "What are you guys arguing about?" I'm sure you have read it. Jesus will say, "What are you people arguing about?" And what are they arguing about? Who's going to be the leader? Who's going to be the whatever? Jesus quickly resolved this by giving them illustrations and by talking about that thing. That way, the conflict was resolved. At another time, they were talking about how we're forgetting bread, this and this. And Jesus made them know. He will come into the situation and de-escalate it because he was monitoring this, the peace, the unity, the togetherness among his disciples. So that way is the same in the home. When you see that the atmosphere is pungent and it seems like there's tension, do not wait until things go out of hand before you start to deal with situations. So in the church, among Christian groups, by pastors, and we must actually apply that principle. Number 8 thing that I've learned as a pastor also is this. You see that, let me quickly illustrate by what Romans chapter 8 and Romans chapter 3 says, 16 and 17 and 18. Romans chapter 3, 16, 17 and 18. It says destruction and misery are in their ways. And the way of peace have they not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Look at that verse 17. It's talking about certain people. It says the way of peace they have not known. There are certain people who don't want peace. All they want is violence in their life. All they want is cognitive in the lives of some people. They easily dissociate from the fact. No matter what you say, they don't see they are wrong. They wrong you. You see, pastors know what we're talking about. Because a lot of people take advantage of pastors. Just because pastors want people to come around, it is easy for them to expect pastors to be tolerant, to embrace them, and to forgive them when they are wrong. But let the pastor do something they think is wrong. Then they don't want to even admit, they don't even want to consider at all that the pastors should be forgiven or the pastors should be tolerated or whatever. Now, what I'm actually talking about is that there are people who seem to be incapable of seeing that they are wrong. You must know that. Look at Cain, for instance. God was the one who rejected his offering, not Abel. He offered his offering, and his brother Abel offered his own offering. Now, God, in his absolute and divine prerogative, accepted the offering of Abel and rejected the offering of Cain. But instead of going to God, Cain went to his brother and killed the brother because of his love. It had nothing at all to do with Abel. Yet, it was Abel that Cain blamed. Cain blamed Abel for his loss. Was Abel to be blamed? No. Look at it. When God even called and said, Cain, why are you sad? Look at what he said. In essence, he was saying, why shouldn't I be sad anyway? You know, God said, if you do good, well, you should be happy now. This is all about you, but still he blames his brother. Now, what I'm saying is that there are certain people who seem to be incapable of correcting themselves. No matter what you say, I'm a pastor, I have seen. You have to pray for such people, and you have to receive wisdom from God to manage such people very, very well until they begin to see. And when we know that it's not that some people just are being wicked, it's just because they don't seem to have that capacity in them to honestly assess situations. They are always right in their own state. They are conceited. And when you understand that as a pastor, it will help you to position people easily. We are not God, and we cannot satisfy the desire and the wants of everybody. But at least we will know how to place people when we understand how they think and how they assess situations. You cannot bring peace between people and effect situation. You cannot bring peace between people and effect resolutions until you have learned to live in peace by yourself. A lot of us are not at peace with ourselves. There is conflict going on inside of you. You are not at peace with yourself. You are not satisfied. For instance, the pastor who is battling with certain things, disappointments and all kinds of things, and you haven't really gotten to understand that you need to place things in the hand of God, have faith and believe God. If you are troubled, it is not possible for you to bring peace to people. So when you are gathering people, that bitterness out of you will seep out and taint them. You won't be able to resolve anything. You won't be able to manage anything. Be at peace with yourself first. It is very, very important. I had issues in the past with certain people. There was someone who used to be in our church, a good man. He used to give. The wife was so committed to church. They were so supportive. At that time, he was assisting me as the assistant pastor, even though not officially ordained. But I so much depended on him. I liked him because he was just a very, very committed person. But there is something that I noticed about the family. They were so controlling. The wife was so controlling. And not only that, they love to pick fights with people. I'm a pastor. For instance, there's somebody who used to be close to me. He was acting he was acting as a kind of PA. If I wanted to go minister, he would go with me. He used to travel with me. But that man that I'm talking about did not go to school. He couldn't read. He had what is, he was dyslexic. In fact, his speech was not really good. So if you would see someone like that with me, because I happen to be someone who's exposed intellectually, so you would expect someone who's going to be doing that for me to be maybe a graduate, someone who could speak very well. But I didn't care about that. This is someone who wanted to serve God. Someone who had, how do I put it, who had the heart to really assist. So I didn't care about his educational level or whatever. But these people, they want to say, Pastor, how could you be having this kind of a person beside you? How can you let him be around you and this and that? How? And they'll be picking fight with the person. They'll be making that person to feel negative. So how will I do this? At some point, I had to make a choice. Should I disconnect from this guy just because these people are they're giving or whatever? Okay, that's one point. Another thing that at some point they just wanted to be, controlling so many things. They wanted their word to be the final. And I looked at it. They will be trying to make decisions about ministry. What God led me to do was clear to me, but they would say, no, we must not do this. We must do this other thing. Something they wanted. Because they felt that since they were part of the people bankrolling this, then they were qualified to decide the direction this was going. But then I found out that to have peace and to have the ministry to continue and to be stabilized, I had to really manage that situation very, very well. One thing was that at some point they became confrontational. The wife became confrontational, the husband became confrontational, they became insulting, and they were picking fight. And what I was able to do, I applied one of the principles of things that I learned here. Ever be in open confrontation with anybody. Please, I'm sure I'm talking to people in the ministry here. Maybe you can do that in the world and shout at each other, but you don't do that in the ministry. Anything relating with the ministry, avoid that at all time entirely. So I avoided that. So at some point I had a meeting with them. I just begged them in the name of the Lord. They did something and people were saying, Pastor, why didn't you say this? Why didn't you say that? I felt in my spirit that no, that wasn't the right thing until they decided on their own to leave. Till today, I have no bitterness against them. We had no issue, and there's no record of me ever opening my mouth to say a negative word or my wife opening her mouth to say a negative word. So I was able to do that because I was at peace with myself and I was at peace with God. Without that, I would have failed. So not to waste your time, Prof has said so much, and other speakers have said a lot also. Being in the ministry has been quite challenging and has been quite rewarding. But all I just want us to understand in the context of the church is that when we're talking about conflict resolution, do not just make everything physical. Intellectual knowledge will help us, and we have to learn about, because not everything is about prayer. But please do not neglect prayer. Let's create a balance. That's what I want to emphasize as I'm going to close this talk now. Principle number one, number two, I think to do and that book, it is good to learn. And do not think that those things are useless too. Do not think that you don't have to pray and everything has, and you do not think also that you have to pray only. When you pray, understand that, this the principle we must apply. Pray as if prayer is the only solution that you can get. But also seek knowledge like this thing we're doing now, as if that's the only thing that will solve the problem. When we strike that balance, everything will be fine. So thank you very much for having me on this platform. I hope I've been able to pass a little little information that will be useful to everybody. Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Dr. Chepe.
Next.
Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Get over to you, sir.
Okay, so ordinarily we're supposed to have a lunch break now, but we will have to take a module before then. So, Prof, sir, you have just 30 minutes for the next module so that we can work with our time.
Okay.
That's module 6, an overview of dispute settlement and so on.
I think we should go on break.
Professor Akinade, over to you.
I think we should go on break.
Please,
let's go on break. When we resume from break, let's take some groups that are yet to present. I know group 7, they want to present. I will find a way of merging my modules so that we still finish within time. We don't mind. Is that okay with you, Dr. Dete?
It's okay, it's okay, Prof.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so please let's take a 30 minutes break.
Thank you.
And be back at 2 o'clock. We'll be back by 2, please. Bon appetit. Enjoy.